All right, everyone. Welcome to our Cannabis virtual town hall meeting. This is our second town hall meeting that we are holding this week. The first one we had Tuesday morning from 10:30 to 12 o'clock, and this one is scheduled to go from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And we scheduled it to ensure that that everyone has a chance to participate. Those who are working or have other reasons not to join us Tuesday mornings, they have a chance now tonight to talk to us. I can share with you that the first meeting that we had was very informative. I walked away with a lot of good information that was provided to us. We had a very positive discussion among those who participated, and just by scanning right now the list of attendees, we have some folks who are returning for a second round of that. So thank you for coming back. And with that, I want to let you know we are in the process of soliciting input from everyone who wants to provide us with their opinion or their expertise or their advice about possibly implementing commercial cannabis operations here in the city of Monterey. The City Council has tasked us to figure out what the public is thinking, and we will report back to the council at a study session at the end of February. I believe it's February 24th, where we will report back to the City Council of what we have heard. We also created a new website that is active now for about a little over 3 weeks. It's called haveyoursaymonterey.org. And one of the topics that is being publicly discussed there among the community members of haveyoursaymonterey.org is also the cannabis retail operations. And you will find there also a lot of information that we have received from various sources, and we are publishing that on that website as we get that information. This meeting is recorded, and it will be also available on that website for those who like to see it again, and also for those who like to see it again and again and again. So with that, I hand it over to Nat, our assistant city manager. We have prepared a very short presentation that sets up the hopefully very fruitful discussion, and I'm really looking forward again to listen to you, but I will also ask questions if that's appropriate at the appropriate time, because this is a discourse of folks that want to learn something, but also there will be folks on the line that want to share their experiences with us, and we will ask some follow-up questions as well. And before I hand it really over to Ned, I forgot to introduce, we have also some of our team members here joining us tonight. There is our Chief of Police, David Hober, and there is, he brought from his team, Lieutenant Mike Bruno and Sergeant Gabe Castor. And then we also have our Finance Director, Lauren Lai here, and our Community Development Director, Kimberly Cole. And so without further ado, I punt it over to Assistant City Manager, Ned Nassathira.
Thank you very much, Hans. And I will try to be brief with an overview, starting with our objectives for the cannabis policy topic. And many of you have heard that goal for this entire process is to develop permitting and regulating commercial cannabis operations in the city of Monterey, if that is a decision that our city council and our community would like to move forward with. When we say do it right the first time, it's to make sure that we have enough research on the staff side, enough community engagement, so that our policymakers, our elected officials, the Monterey City Council can make an informed decision about how to move forward. We also recognize that staff will be drafting the proposed ordinance for final approval by the City Council, and that we're going to work on a solution that's going to be based on best practices. We are not the first city in California, as many of you know, to consider cannabis. We're reviewing best practices, and we're getting feedback from everyone: neighbors, business districts, consultants, prospective operators, and of course, our elected officials, the City Council. Part of the public input process, and Hans already highlighted this, we're getting outreach in a variety of different ways. Our council, neighborhood associations, business associations, operators is part of that analysis. And we do it through virtual town halls like this one, the second of two town hall meetings. And like Hans said, the Have Your Say Monterey portal, which you can find at haveyourSayMonterey.org. When you get to that portal, you'll see there are a variety of policy and project topics. Click on commercial cannabis. On that webpage, you can learn more about the complex topic. You can watch prior council meetings where we talk about the cannabis roadmap and download other documents. And also, more importantly, take a survey. We've had over 200 people take the survey so far, and looking forward to even more engagement on how you, our members of the public, feel about cannabis. We also have worked on an informational mailer and a postcard survey. So this Saturday, or potentially as late as Monday, if you're a Monterey voter, in your mailbox, be on the lookout for a flyer that will have some information about the topic, along with a postcard that is a business reply postcard, no postage necessary. Fill out 8 quick questions with a pen, drop it in your mailbox, and we'll receive it. We'll tabulate the data. It's another way for us to reach out to people who do not have online access to the survey. And we'll be tabulating that and then sharing it with council. A couple of questions that have come up relating to revenues. We know that based on an analysis that likely revenues, if we do move forward with commercial cannabis, will bring in anywhere between $400,000 to $1.4 million annually. And if the money comes in, where does it go? Well, it's a mixed bag in terms of feedback that we've received so far. Councilmember Williamson has mentioned that his interest is in the funding to go towards housing programs, rental assistance, social justice issues. Councilmember Hoffa has expressed an interest in those categories, as well as homeless, social service providers, and other city services. City staff have given feedback as well, given COVID and our economic impacts due to the loss of tourism and sales tax and hotel tax in our communities. These funds could also be used to help bridge the budget deficit gap, not completely because it's in many tens of millions, but help support other service levels, whether that's public safety, fire, library, what have you. And it's important for us to all create a common understanding on realistically what will these revenues bring in if it moves forward, and then also have an understanding of what would these revenues be used for. Hans has created a 6-step process we're calling the Roadmap to Cannabis. And this was presented to council, so you can watch that video if you want to learn more. We outline the detailed 6-step process for that. It starts with creating a starting point, mapping out the process. Number 2, identifying whether consensus has been reached. We're still in step 1 right now, somewhere between step 1 and 2, gathering feedback. If the feedback tells us and council decides to move forward with commercial cannabis in Monterey, we'll then go to step 3, which is adopt a policy. We'll craft a policy and prepare for launch of allowing commercial cannabis. We'll then issue the permits, step 4, and then step 5, confirm, monitor, regulate those businesses. And then step 6, which is an iterative process of reviewing how we're doing and making revisions to the ordinance or to the policy as need be. So that gives you a little bit of a preview on what the cannabis roadmap might look like. And the reason why we call it a roadmap is because it gives us some flexibility about when we're going to get feedback, and recognizing that commercial cannabis isn't a topic that we can just adopt overnight and move forward with. It will take time, and we are flexible in this process. How do you define community consensus? Well, part of that involves soliciting pros and cons about commercial cannabis. There are advantages, but there are also some concerns in the community, and we want to hear from you tonight, and we want to hear from residents through surveys and other mechanisms. The other is to assess and make conclusions based on those assessments. Again, we have the surveys, we have feedback, we have postcards going to Monterey voters that will help identify how our community feels about the topic. If there's widespread support, most likely council will say, we're going to move forward with it in some way. How we're going to regulate that and how many commercial cannabis operators will be allowed will vary. If the reaction is mixed, we'll share that with council and they'll have to make a decision. And if there's widespread opposition, council may decide not to move forward with commercial cannabis in Monterey. Whoops. Okay, that's really the last slide. So it gives you a little bit of a sneak preview about where we are. Again, as Hans said, today's goal is to spend the time to gather feedback from you, and we'll be asking some questions of you in order to do that. Back to Hans.
Don't say it. Thank you so much, Nat. Yeah, the floor is yours now. We have around 20 attendees, I see, and if you like to speak, there is the symbol on the bottom of the Zoom screen. Raise your hand, please, and Nat is the one who will figure out the other technicality and how to get people lined up to speak. So if we want to listen today, we want to hear from you. I see on the list of attendees quite a good mix between residents. I see also some commercial cannabis operators on the peninsula that are participating today. And I see a lot of other interested folks on the list of folks that are attending here. So with that, the line, so to speak, is open, and please feel free to raise your hand and share what you want to share with us. And as I stated earlier, this is a very interactive process. We will ask also questions back because we want to learn, and we learned a lot already on Tuesday from John Rico, who is the first one out of the starting gate to raise his hand. And with that, I hand it over to Nat for the management of all the folks that are hopefully helping us to figure out what is best for the city of Monterey. Yeah. So go ahead, Nat, please.
All right, thank you. And for those who aren't familiar with this platform, and no one's called in yet, so I don't have to give you instructions on what buttons to push on your phone. There's a button on the bottom of your screen, raise hand. Please virtually raise your hand to give feedback. And we'll start with John Rico. As Hans said, we heard from on Tuesday morning. And if you could unmute, welcome.
How you doing? This is John Rico. I just wanted to kind of say a few things real quick, kind of on what I touched on before. In the last webinar, I asked about whether the city will be offering a social equity program. Monterey County is one of the most disproportionate counties in California when it comes to cannabis. If you remember, there was no safe access to cannabis during the years in which cannabis was labeled a medicine under California's Proposition 215. The city of Monterey in particular criminalized any cannabis businesses that opened to help those protected under the state law during that time, most publicly My Caregiver Cooperative. Even now, low income and minorities are still blacklisted and blocked from opening cannabis businesses within the county of Monterey. The cannabis businesses currently operating in Monterey County represent the wealthy and non-minorities. This practice needs to be changed. Counties like Los Angeles, Sacramento, and San Francisco have worked with the Bureau of Cannabis Control to establish social equity programs to, and I quote, promote equitable ownership and employment opportunities to those low income and minorities impacted by the war against drugs while exercising those laws protected under California's Proposition 215. And moving forward, if the city of Monterey decides to offer licenses to cannabis businesses, it's important to take note of those that defended medical patients and stood up for our state's law during the Prop 215 years. So if the city does decide to offer licenses, I would like to request that myself and anybody else who suffered greatly during that time get an opportunity to have priority application as they offer with social equitable programs. So it's just something that I kind of wanted to get on the record and kind of mention. Again, I know the city may not choose to do a social equitable program, but I do think that it's very important that we do acknowledge the people that were, at the forefront, I guess I would like to say, during the Prop 215 years, whenever you guys do move forward with licensing.
Great, thanks, John Rico. Do we have more questions for John Rico? I don't see anyone else with their hands raised. We've got a quiet group today, but you know, I do know that we got Sal who is rejoined. So Sal, welcome back.
Yeah, hi everyone. How you doing this evening? Don't really have a ton more to add versus the conversation that we had on Tuesday, but just wanted to let you know I'm here, and if this turns into another question and answer session, that more than happy to weigh in.
Thank you.
Great. You know, one of the questions we asked in the survey is do you think storefront cannabis retailers should be allowed in all commercial districts like any other store? So, you know, that's a question we can ask and see if anyone else has feedback on, or if others have comments. I think John Rico is one who's raised his hand. I don't know if anyone else would like to chime in. We can hear from John Rico. What are your thoughts?
Just after giving some thought as to where cannabis retail businesses should be located within the city of Monterey, I believe the city should offer licenses in the downtown Alvarado area, the Lighthouse Cannery Row area, and up near Del Monte Shopping Center. These three sections of Monterey will have the strong potential for revenue collection within the city.
Okay. I think you mentioned that earlier this week. So Lighthouse, downtown, Del Monte, and North Fremont were the areas?
Del Monte was the new one for me because I took some time and went down and took a look. North Fremont is a good area, but North Fremont, in going down in that area, I didn't really see that there was a lot of area available, and it is very close to the seaside section where they have a lot of dispensaries, right? So I think Del Monte, being that it's up a little bit more, is probably a little bit more, of a better choice when it comes to between those two. And then obviously, as we said before, Cannery Row Lighthouse for the tourism, and then downtown Alvarado for its regular business interactions throughout the week. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for your comments and feedback, John Rico. We've got Valentina, or go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, go ahead, Valentina.
Yeah. Hi, it's Valentia Piccinini. I am a resident from Pebble Beach. I first want to commend the city of Monterey for the tremendous effort that you created on this outreach program to solicit input from your community. It's impressive. I stood before the city of Monterey in 2010 and again in 2014. Most of you know my story. I was bedridden. I've had multiple sclerosis for 29 years. I had 2 teenager kids. I had a fall with 4 broken ribs and a torn rotator cuff, and Stanford Hospital sent me to Santa Cruz. It was because of what I didn't experience in that community and other communities in Oregon, in Washington, and some of the other states that I traveled to, that allowed me to create a vision where patient care was first and foremost. My experience in Santa Cruz and San Jose was very much alike. They could not tell me what product I needed for my pain and spasticity or for sleep. They asked me when was the last time I smoked a joint, and I said, I've never smoked a joint. I have 7 kids. I sent 3 to treatment. I caught every one of them, sent 3 to treatment because I thought it was a gateway drug. I can certainly identify with Councilman Ed Smith and his concerns, because that was my little brother. He was in and out of juvenile hall, and he also went on to prison in his later life. And I really thought it was a gateway. And as I shared with Supervisor John Phillips, we were lied to. Cannabis, I look back now and know that my little brother was self-medicating for anxiety and depression. And I know now, and working as closely with the patient community that we have here, I was the first applicant to apply in Monterey for a mutual benefit nonprofit corporation with the state of California, and was licensed to have the only brick and mortar at that point. A few of the others now that have brick and mortar were only looking for delivery. But my love and passion was to want to share the education portion that I spent while I was bedridden years looking for and forwarding it to every one of the board of supervisors from 2014 to 2016, which allowed them to even finally agree. Because of the medicine, people saw me get out of a wheelchair. I was no longer using my walker. I've been a philanthropist. I've raised over $15 million for a local nonprofit. I've been retired. When my last child left 4 years ago for USC, I thought, who in the world am I going to nurture? And who am I going to help? And I have an incredible concept that is the only premier cannabis wellness center in the state of California. I opened up in December of 2019. We have 61% of my patients are tourists. And I'm going to tell you, they fly in from Florida, from New York, from Washington. They've heard about us. They've read about us. We've been fortunate enough to have Forbes magazine write an article. We had Senior Magazine, California Leaf do an article on the senior woman. I've sent many of you a lot of segments of the articles that have been published. I did a podcast about Canna moms in Boston, because even though they opened up medicinally, a lot of people still had the shame and stigma, as I've shared with our local BCC. It's there. And for some of the people like myself who really believed that it was a gateway drug, to change our mind and look at the facts of what's been produced in clinical trials in Spain and Israel, made it more valid for us to look at it. And once I became the face and the activist and the major influencer on the peninsula, of course, everybody wanted to call it pot, and all the kids would come from CSUMB with their pot card. And I'm like, sit down. This is not what this is about. Someone said something the other night, and I listened to it yesterday, Hans, and how brilliant for me to be able to watch a YouTube on what you two had talked about, or all of you had talked about the day before. When people come into our dispensary, I would have to say 75% of it is medicinal. And to answer your question, Hans, could we just do it medicinally and not use adult use? And I have to tell you that I had hired Harborside, Steve D'Angelo's group, Conrad. And he said, Valentia, I'm afraid that you won't be able to make enough money to sustain yourself with the tremendous investment that I made. I put over $5 million in purchasing my building and almost $1.7 million in tenant improvements, just as a way of conveying to people that this is safe. It's not dark. It's transparent. There's questions that can get answered. I have the only in California luxurious cannabis wellness center featuring a pharmacist, nurses, actual RNs, and patient educators. My salary for everyone in our overhead was over $400,000 last year. And it's not because I had a lot of people, it's just that we pay them very well. The public response has been overwhelming. It's been so well accepted, and I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised how quickly it happened. And so I believe that Monterey, like I said, I stood in front of you over a decade ago in 2010, and after I lost in 2014, I went to the Board of Supervisors through Nancy Selfridge. At that time, she was one of my yes votes, and she introduced me to Jane. Then I went on to judge, and every one of them to change their mind. And that if I was the face that could be the testimonial to say it's okay for our moms or our grandmas to use it for sleep or for nausea or for anxiety. I know that there's still people in the community that sit in their car and make their wives go in because they can't get over the stigma that we all grew up with. Just say no. Nancy Reagan's campaign didn't work then, and we certainly know that prohibition hasn't worked. When people come into our, the patient community comes in, and I know that Aram and Sal address the recreational market, we spend a great deal of time explaining that sometimes if you're smoking a joint, you're burning off 75% of the medicine. It's only going to last 2 hours. And what are you going to do for the rest of the day? And so it's an opportunity that we've had to educate people to do tinctures and drops and different things that actually are more beneficial for the health component of it. So I think that with ours and why we're different is that patient care is first and foremost, and education is something that we pride ourselves on. And then we follow through with the patients over the first week to see how they're doing and if we need to swap out the medicine. I think Monterey deserves, we have a tremendous amount of patients from your community that come and visit us, tourism that are staying in your hotels that come and visit us. We love them. Like I said, you're losing a lot of tax revenue dollars, as I've shared with Hans in the past, by not having an upscale wellness center. I hate to see another pot shop. Hans, did I hear you say 30? Did I actually hear you say 30? That was shocking to me. I think that Seaside is everything that a city should not do. I think they made a mistake by doing 5.
Valentina, I said 13 on the peninsula.
Oh, I thought you said 30. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
that's my German accent. If I don't take care of it, people misunderstand me many times.
Or my ears. And so
yeah, I'm sorry.
13.
13.
13 is still a lot, you know, and
Yeah.
what I heard last night is that the margins are slim.
Yes.
I mean, I remember when they passed in January another 5% increase. I said, no, I mean, absolutely not. I'm not going to pass that on. I'm going to absorb it because the consumer, my patient population are mostly seniors. They can't afford it. And so I think that a lot of the quick in and out that a lot of people thought they were going to get and make millions and line their pockets, I think they're realizing that it's hard to do business in any business, and the cannabis business is even more difficult. You know, I've been a successful business person for over 28 years in the commercial real estate market, and I've never seen anything like this. It's extremely demanding. And like I said, if I would have known 10 years ago that I wasn't going to have my first brick and mortar till 10 years later, I would have said I'm too old. But the rewards have been great for us and for our patient community. I just want to share with you one thing that I saw, because I was an actual consultant when everything was going on in Pacific Grove. And it was unfathomable to me that PG would allow a multi-state operator to come into PG. It'd be like sticking a BevMo in the middle of PG. I think that some of these big operators that are coming in from Los Angeles and are in other states, I've been looking at real estate and I hear people say, hey, you're the third person. All of these guys are coming in from out of town. So I know that you'll do it where it's merit-based, that it should be a qualified person that not only maybe doesn't have experience in it, but have a passion for the plant and use it themselves. But we've got some good operators that have been working that came from the illicit market, and I take my hat off to them. They've done a good job. The only reason why we're different is that we provide an education-based platform, that the patients are so hungry for. Marin County in 2015 did almost what PG did. And I was one of the first applicants during that process, and a bidding war started on real estate. They chose the applicant that was tied to the real estate. And I'd hate to see Monterey do that, because PG did that and everybody started paying rent.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they changed their mind. And I watched people pay rent for 2 years in Marin County. And then all of a sudden Marin County said, you know what? We're not going to do it. And people had invested millions of dollars purchasing buildings. So I think that, you know, there were some questions asked the other day, how many should we have? It's my opinion, you shouldn't have more than 2. And I think you have to tell us where they should be, because I've looked at real estate all over to buy a building. And I think that there are merits for several different locations that you have in town. A few of them were mentioned the other day. But I just hope that you choose the applicant and then let them find the real estate, so we don't get into a crazy bidding war like Marin County did. Even with PG, it was a shame what happened to PG. So your transparency.
I'm sure some elected officials from PG are listening right now.
Well, I know that a lot of them feel very poorly about what's happened. It was unfortunate what happened, and a lot of money and time was spent. And I know that they'll come back and do a great job when they finally get the right operators in there.
All right.
Thank you.
Valentina, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Valentia. And I will, let's see, lower the hand here. And we got a few comments and questions. One.
Let me ask a question back to along the line that was just raised by the three commercial folks right now, and then let them think about their answer, Nat, and please respond to the questions. Valentina Piccini just expressed that 13 shops on the peninsula is some sort of oversaturation already. And when you look at the economic data, one shop is usually supporting 18 to 20,000 residents. And when you look at that formula and you realize on the Monterey Peninsula, we have around 107, 110,000 folks. The 13 dispensaries that we have are already oversaturating the market. So I just want to hear also from at one time tonight, not right now, from the vendors, the commercial operators. What does it mean if you open stores here? Do you close other stores somewhere else? Because the market dynamics are what the market dynamics are. So it's just a question. Right now, 13 stores support about 8,000 residents in Monterey. And the data kind of shows it should be at least 18 to 20,000 per commercial cannabis operation. And I saw the questions in the chat and they are very interesting, Nat. Why don't you take a stab at it, please?
Sure. And you know, some of the questions are ones that are just posed to others. Juan Rodriguez asks, given the current status of the city budget and all the research that shows cannabis is not as harmful as we were led to believe, what are the arguments against allowing cannabis in the city? It's certainly a good question. And as we've shared with all of you, this is an opportunity to hear from folks who've joined us, and as staff, we're not here to argue in favor or against, but it's a good question. And if anyone has comments on that, please feel free to raise your hand and answer. We have another comment from Sarah W, who says a merit-based application process is important to go through the proper channels and elect to give cannabis licensing to the candidates able to help the community the most, based on the proven ability to give back to the city. First come, first serve may not be the best route because you may not know all the potential applicants and their past community contributions. Merit-based system would provide the most benefits for the community of Monterey. Yep, we've heard some of those comments too, Hans.
Yeah, and we take them very seriously to heart. Merit-based system has absolutely its own set of pros and cons. Our staff is educated about that. We did some training on different ways of award scenarios: first come, first serve, merit-based, free for all, etc. And we have not made a decision yet whether we go merit-based or not. But I think the arguments that were made tonight by Valentina, as well as the arguments that we heard from other vendors, were in favor of merit-based. And so I can assure you that we take this under a serious consideration, because should the council go there, of course we wanna absolutely consider the experiences that other communities or that others have made in other communities, and we'll not show our we do not tip our cards right now in which direction we are going, because truly this is an effort right now to reach out and learn. And last but not least, our council has the last say after weighing all the arguments. However, I want to share with you that the experiences that were shared with us Tuesday and also so far today that we're talking about merit space are for us seriously to be taken under consideration.
Thanks, Hans. We have a comment from Carrie Stiebel. Hopefully I pronounced that last name correctly. Hi, Monterey is known for supporting locally owned businesses. Many applicants will be applying from all over the state and even out of the state. Many out-of-towners resell the permit after they've obtained the license. This happened in Seaside and has happened all throughout the state. I would recommend that the city support locally owned business applicants and be aware that many applicants are only after the quick buck they will make by flipping the license. So
One of the things we have to consider also is that the businesses that are coming are making investments into our city, if they are coming again. But if they are coming, they will make investments into real estate. They make investments into the buildings, and to run an operation like commercial cannabis requires also business expertise and also the breadth to comply with all the various regulations and other obligations that may be imposed by the city. And so it is, of course, always a good suggestion to just say local should have a shot at that. The ultimate decision making again will be to find qualified operators. So that's one of the lessons that I learned from other city managers who I spoke to, who shared with me that it was a key element of when they looked at operators, that they wanted to be sure that this is not just some sort of talented business, but somebody who really understands the in and out of that commercial enterprise, because it is heavily regulated, it is heavily monitored, and it requires some sort of experience. So we appreciate, of course, the preference for local business, and again, that will be also shared, that input, with our council.
Yep. This is another invitation to feel free to raise your hand virtually to join us and give your feedback, give your comments, join the conversation. And Nico Enea is here, and welcome.
Hello, thank you everyone for putting this on. Hans, Matt, Dave, Gabe, really appreciate you guys taking the time that most cities in California don't take to reach out and really give the public an opportunity to put their opinion in before the city council moves forward with deciding on a cannabis ordinance. First, I want to give a little bit of background about myself. I grew up essentially in the Monterey area. I've maintained a residence there my entire life. I'm currently a co-founder of NUG, a premier vertically integrated cannabis company in California. We operate pretty much every level of the supply chain. Currently, we operate 3 stores in Northern California. At the end of April, that will be 5 total stores. On average, our stores in a single month see between 20,000 to 30,000 customers in a month. Our highest grossing store, which is in San Leandro, that has a population of around 90,000. We've paid the city as of Q4 in a single fiscal year around $800,000, give or take, which kind of brings me to my next point. In your guys' decision-making process, I do think it would be prudent to limit the number of licenses to 3 to 4 and put them in separate geographic locations to avoid the problems we've seen in Seaside. A lot of those dispensaries are clustered together, very close to one another. And at the end of the day, we are trying to make cannabis as easily accessible to the community. And by doing that, having separate geographic locations is very important. Running an RFP process, we've been through about 7 of them. 5 of them we have won, 2 we are in process. We are very familiar with what it takes to operate successful dispensaries. And one thing we've learned throughout the process is to really get committed operators, requiring them to apply with a location really weeds out those to be applicants that may be just trying to flip the permit and sell it, because these permits do have value even if they're not operational. So if the council does move forward with an RFP process, I would strongly suggest requiring a property to participate in that RFP process. I absolutely echo and support all of Valentina's comments around the medical nature of this, and that being at the forefront of providing a premier cannabis service. But at the same time, adult use and medical use in the state of California have become synonymous with one another. In a medical establishment, you could also buy recreational cannabis. So I would strongly suggest that allowing adult use and medical would be the wisest decision. And if you want to generate the most amount of revenue, that would certainly be the path you would take. And the gentleman that spoke before Valentina about social equity programs going on in the state, our organization, and you could look at us at nug.com, we highly support social equity programs. Currently, we are incubating 6 different equity groups in the city of Oakland. We built them 6 individual greenhouses that they are occupying rent-free for 3 years. So giving some type of preferential treatment, or say carving out, 1 of 3 permits to go to a social equity group, I would strongly be in support of. And certainly just the data, the facts, disproportionate incarceration rates, I absolutely believe that that would be, a form of social justice, and having that be part of the cannabis ordinance, I would strongly support. In terms of having, local business, my family has done business in Monterey since the 1930s. My great-grandfather came over here from Sicily, started a cannery business. Still the name on Cannery Row is Enea. So we are very familiar with the area. We've owned and operated businesses in Pacific Grove and Monterey. My family has my entire life. Our organization, NUG, it has over 200 employees. And in all the areas we operate, we strongly encourage and execute on local hire provisions. So say for our Oakland operations, about 70% or more are Oakland residents, and that's the same for our other retail establishments. And a big part of our business, since we are vertically integrated, is that ability to pass on the savings to the customer. A lot of the other dispensaries, the majority of them, I should say, in California, are not vertically integrated and end up having to charge higher prices. So by being able to pass on that cost savings, you're, especially in times like this where there's extreme economic hardship, having them spend less of their disposable customers, having them spend less of their disposable income on cannabis, I would think would be a priority of the council. In terms of where the money would go, I think it going to the general fund and being allocated to all the programs that were listed would be smart. Of course, the non-funded pension liabilities will be a big problem, whether that's in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. It will be coming quick and it will happen fast. So the city moving quickly, if they do choose to go the course of an RFP route, I think is very important. Some of the RFPs we've participated in have lasted over 8 months. So taking decisive action, both at the council and the RFP level, I feel is very important. And in terms of security, just touching, since we do have the chief of police on here, when it comes to the stipulations around dispensary security, I would strongly recommend, of course, surveillance around the whole exterior of the facility, surveillance around any place inside of the building, and 2 armed guards. We've also worked with cities in the past that wanted to have live feeds to our security cameras, just in case a situation arises during business hours, which it never has. Having 2 armed guards present really deters any type of, would-be criminals to come to your establishment. So kind of lifting the burden off of law enforcement to not have to worry about protecting the dispensaries by having armed guards. And I'd say that's consistent for every dispensary we operate. That's Oakland, San Leandro, Sacramento, Redding, El Cerrito. All of them allow armed guards, so I would strongly encourage that allowance. And again, we've never had a situation just due to our presence and our guards being there and being armed. And they are third-party services. They are not employed by us. So they are bonded and insured and have gone through all of the guard training that the state of California requires. And I guess with that, those are my general comments. Be happy to answer any questions.
Nico, thank you so much. Let me assure you the name Enea is quite well, and you're the second Enea I listened to today. So thank you again for your input today.
Thanks, Nico.
What else?
And let's see, we don't have anyone else who's raised their hand, so.
Let me ask a question. And I asked the question really out of not knowing it. And I discovered that during my research for this topic over the past month, that is social equity. So I don't understand completely the nexus between social equity and commercial cannabis operations. When we permit, or when a 7-Eleven is permitted, we are surrounded with social equity suggestions. So what brings up the social equity? And this is really a knowledge question, because it seems to be integratedly connected with cannabis, commercial cannabis operations. So maybe someone of the industry can explain that to me, why there is a social equity issue connected with that. Not that it's bad or not that it's good, but I just wonder when other business types open, it's difficult to see their nexus to social equity. So if somebody can help me there to learn more about it, I would appreciate that.
Super. So, we have David Villareal, who has raised his hand, I think, right before you asked the question. So maybe he has a comment and may be able to answer your question too. And then after that, we'll go to Amy Rivard. So, and then Nico has a comment as well. So we'll go first with David and ask him to unmute himself.
Good evening. My name is David, and I don't have a comment on what you were speaking about. I just wanted to express my feelings. I'm a local pharmacist, have been in the area for 35 years and work in Monterey, Carmel, Pacific Grove, throughout the peninsula. And I have transitioned into cannabis as the cannabis pharmacist, where I work with Valentia. And over the last year that I have been there, have witnessed so many amazing things that I'd never imagined while I had been in the trenches of the regular pharmacy. And I can see this concept of having a more of a wellness center or having health professionals where we can add a whole different skill set that is really needed. Other states in the US, Connecticut, Louisiana, I believe Minnesota, require pharmacists to be on staff to allow them to assist patients through this whole process. I've been able to witness more relief of pain, sleep, and anxiety than I have in the pharmacy using cannabis. And many people know that we are a trusted source. And I have many of my colleagues that call on me, many of the local physicians that refer patients. So from my perspective, I can see that the recreational is very important, but it should have a little bit of a medical as well. And the two do dovetail very well. But with a little emphasis on medical, we have many individuals, very young ones, that will come in, young people. And I always tease, and I say, well, bring your mom in next time, or bring grandma, ask them how they're sleeping. And they kind of give me a little giggle, but many times they will return, and it's very nice to be able to utilize my skills in a whole different environment. And I'm able to really provide some good, solid information. I can evaluate their medications to make sure that there's no major interactions. For a protocol, we take it nice and slow, just like it did, when we worked in the pharmacy. Many times physicians will call upon us to ask for assistance on medications. And, for me, this is just another tool in the toolbox. So I would really appreciate, a consideration for including that, and a nice environment to make our senior population feel welcome and warm, and it's very possible. And I think we do have many patients that travel into Carmel from Monterey. So there is definitely a need, and it would be something to consider to add that value to another dispensary. So
thank you, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us and giving your feedback. We're going to, Jamie Rivard may have have a comment, and also responding to Hans's comment. So let's hear from Jamie.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hans, to address your question about social equity,
Yeah.
It has to do with the history of cannabis and how it's disproportionately affected minorities. So you've got a lot of minorities that have criminal records for being involved in cannabis, and now that it's being legalized, those criminal records are kind of holding them back, and so they're not able to participate. And so now you've got a lot of white folks who are getting these licenses and making all the money. And so that's the idea, is to try to equalize, level the playing field.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank
you. I can see that. I can see that clearly. Thank you.
And how about, let's see, Nico had a comment as well, so we'll go ahead and hear from him again.
Yeah, I just wanted to address, there are some fuzzy laws at the state level around having RNs or doctors that are employed by the dispensary actually recommending products for that person to purchase at the dispensary. And where that line really gets completely drawn is, if the doctor or the RN is acting as a pharmacist or prescribing a specific, cannabis product to help a specific remedy. That clinical research is not out there. It's being developed, but it's not completely out there. And the state of California does not allow doctors to write prescriptions for cannabis if that doctor is employed by the dispensary. So I just want to make that distinction. I think in Valencia's comments in her dispensary, absolutely providing them knowledge, information, answering questions, absolutely appropriate. But there is kind of a distinct line there. And just addressing the social equity aspect, yeah, there's, and Valencia touched on this really well in the Nixon era and the just say no, and the law enforcement mandates that were really carried out over decades led to disproportionate incarceration rates for people of color and minorities. And how this is typically taken into practice in the RFP process is, say there's an individual who is a cannabis resident in the city of Monterey, and he was a minority of a person of color, and he was arrested in the last 10 years for having cannabis and was incarcerated for it. That is typically what would qualify an individual to be a, you know, social equity applicant and maybe get some additional points for that. That's certainly what was consistent with what San Francisco did with their social equity program and with what Oakland did with their social equity program. And another thing just about addressing seniors looking for information and seniors having potentially not a lot of mobility, issuing dispensary permits with delivery permits, I would highly encourage. That would allow for, you know, maybe an individual to visit a dispensary, feel comfortable with the setting of the dispensary, and then next time get it delivered to their house, knowing if anything goes wrong, there is a brick and mortar location to bring that back to. So allowing, and there is a state license, it's called a micro business license, that would allow for you to issue one license that would be inclusive of delivery and brick and mortar retail. And I guess I had a question. Does this feel like it's leading towards an RFP process, or will this be first come, first serve? And I know the number 13 was thrown out there, but I think just given the number of dispensaries in Seaside and Carmel, 13 would be extremely on the high side.
Well, we have presently 13 on the peninsula, Nico. And like I stated earlier, we have not made a determination for an yes or no for an RFP process, but the pros and cons that we have heard so far for merit-based make it more than likely that we will consider that, but the ultimate decision will be made by the council. And of course, until then, we have to form an opinion what we recommend to the council. So that's as much as I know right now where we are in our thinking. Our group has not made a decision as staff what we recommend, but we heard for sure a lot of good arguments for an RFP process. And who's next?
Yep, next is John Rico Carr. Oh, John Rico, let's see, let's try one more time.
I just punted out again to those folks from whom we haven't heard yet. There are still quite a few folks out there. Of course, there is no need for you to speak, but we really appreciate if there's any other topics that we haven't talked about. The cannabis, commercial cannabis comes in many forms. You can talk about allowing lab testing. You can talk about delivery services that Nico just spoke about. We can talk about retail businesses. We can talk about manufacturing is also a business. Distribution is out there, and also there are the point of sales operations on cannabis events where basically cannabis operators come together, and it's hosted, let's say, in a hotel or at a fairgrounds. So that's also a different set of ordinances to allow them cannabis events in the town. Again, I just we are here to listen. We are here to learn, and it's not just about the storefronts. It's about also distribution, manufacturing, cannabis events, deliveries, labs. We have a lab testing facility permitted right now out at Ryan Ranch. And that is not operational yet, but is probably operational sooner than later. So if anyone has something to say, please do it. Otherwise, our entire team is grateful to have the rest of Thursday night off.
This is John Rico again.
Yeah, hi, John Rico.
I actually was going to recommend that I was going to talk to you about doing some events and offering the event services out towards the Monterey County Fairgrounds. There is events and things that have happened, obviously a lot more before the recreational change. But now since things are getting more regulated and I definitely wanted to recommend that is a good form of or a good way to generate revenue here in Monterey, is to offer the events out towards that way. I was involved with several different events before the recreation period, and then I've been involved with some of what they call sessions these days, which are I guess they're not necessarily a licensed event, but they're like medical events. They're for medical patients to get together and be able to exchange with each other and be able to pick up products and things like that. So that was one thing that I definitely wanted to bring up, just as you actually were speaking on it. So,
Great.
All right.
Thanks, John Rico. And we also have another comment here from Sarah, who comments that Cannabis Cup would be beautiful in Monterey. And I just had to Google that. So it looks like it's an event that takes place in different states. So interesting. Learn something new. Thanks, Sarah.
All right. I think we got what we needed from you, and we appreciate very much the input. Be assured that we have listened carefully, and we will keep on listening carefully. This video will be also posted on our website, Have Your Say Monterey, as well as a lot of other communication we may or may not receive. We very much appreciate all the input. It's good to listen, and with that, I ask if anybody else from staff still has something to say, or is there anything that you guys still want to ask or want to know? I should have not indicated that we can end now. Yeah. Should have done this afterwards.
The only thing I wanted to add, Hans, was just to share our Have Your Say website. You can go down to Cannabis, Commercial Cannabis here, and click on Take the Survey. And this is where you can learn more about the topic, subscribe to an email list where we'll give you updates as policy decisions are made. And we already have the town hall from Tuesday posted on YouTube, and we'll be posting tonight's video on YouTube as well. And if you click on survey, that's where you'll be able to sign in, register for Have Your Say Monterey, and take the cannabis survey. So I wanted to share the screen and show you that. Should take no more than 5 minutes to complete.
So we have received so far over 150 surveys online. That is very much embraced. We can differentiate where those surveys come from, whether they are from residents or from businesses or from outside the city. So we're very, we will have a good picture there as well of what folks think when they submitted the survey. This was very informative again. I want to thank all of you who have participated. I feel always I learn a lot from those meetings, so does our staff. And rest assured, we took extremely copious notes, and we will discuss this among ourselves. And please stay tuned. The next probably important date that you should follow will be on February 24th. That's a Wednesday. It will be an afternoon study session, and it starts at 4 p.m. So we have that scheduled for right now. Should any events happen, sometimes COVID-related events, overtake our planning sometimes. Of course, you will see it on our posted agendas that something else is going to happen. But we are committed right now to brief the council about what we have heard, and that will be the meeting where I will ask the council, what would you like to do? What do you want to go to the next step? So again, thank you so much for listening, and everyone, I hope you stay healthy, take all the precautions you have to do for COVID-19, and this winter storm shall pass. I think it has peaked right now, and we are on the back end right now. So with that, have a great night, everyone. And thank you, staff, also for making time in your calendar to attend this meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.